Okay, so even though I know you guys were super excited to see me hem and haw about this for the last 10 minutes, I went ahead and got my horizontal measurements in here. So I have decided that the edge of the head will be right here, and this is where the eye will start. You see this is the center point here, so it's just right of center, which means that the majority of the bright light in the painting will be right around here, which I think looks, I'm just standing back and looking at it, you know, but I think that looks pretty good. I think that's about where I want it. So get myself back in position here. So I know this looks like a bunch of nothing right now, but because I've, you know, taken the time to actually measure this stuff out, and I have an idea of where things are in all these different tick marks, this is really the main structure of my composition. And this is actually providing me with a tremendous amount of information right now. So what I'm going to do at this point really is start to draw. I'm going to break some of these proportions down a little bit further. First I need to get myself back in position, which really is a pain to do all the time. Okay. I can tell I'm in position because it's starting to strain my neck just a little bit, but that's kind of what I want out of this pose. So, okay. I'm always kind of amazed when I teach figure drawing and figure painting how the models can, you know, take a break or even take a week off and then come back into class and perfectly get back in the pose. But really, like, you kind of seem to develop a bit of muscle memory over time in understanding how your body fits back into that pose. So hopefully I'll develop that soon. I haven't yet. All right. So I'm going back right now and doing really fun stuff, which is just checking that I'm actually back in the same position. Because obviously if I'm not back in the same position, that's really going to change a lot of things. So I want to make sure that's all correct. It looks like I am. So nose is there. So now I'm going to start breaking this stuff down further. Let's see what I got here with the eyes. I'm going to get there to the... So now the point of my pencil is at the left side of my head, putting my thumb where my left eye stops, and I'm going to measure over one from that. And that is almost exactly half of this initial measurement. So what I did was I measured from the left side of my head to the corner of my eye, like I said, and then I moved it over one. So now the tip of the pencil is at the corner of my left eye, and I'm seeing where my thumb lines up, and it happens to line up with the tear duct on my right eye, which is this point right here. So that's starting to make things a bit easier already. I have an idea of almost exactly where my left eye should go in this composition. So it should stop about right here. And once again, this doesn't look like a drawing yet. It looks like a bunch of tiny little marks, because that's truly all it is until I start filling some of the stuff in. But if I take a bit more time at this stage to get these little tick marks in here, it's going to save me a lot of time later. So let's see. So right now I'm going to take that half measurement again. So that was a pretty good one. And because dividing things in half obviously is a pretty good way to understand how to break down these other proportions. So it's hard to think and draw at the same time. I'm thinking about two different things. My wife always fusses at me that I can't do more than one task at the same time, and that is 100% true. Really struggle to do more than one thing at once. Get kind of like singular minded, very focused on one thing. Alright, so just below the eye, just below my right eye, is half of this. So that should be perfectly half, and that is. What I've also noticed about this, my left eye horizontal measurement, is that it's actually just a hair over halfway. Okay, so it's just a little bit larger, about there. But knowing where that is going to go is really going to help line up the edge of the nose, because the edge of the nose is quite close to the corner of the eye, right over there. So what I want to start doing, I think I want to start drawing this a little bit here. So I do have an angle to my head, and that's natural but also purposeful. I kind of want that little bit of kind of cock tilt to the head, and I'm going to get that in here so I don't start drawing everything just on a perfectly flat axis, which I think is the inclination. I see this with my students all the time. They miss the energy, the angle of the pose, because getting that angle is more difficult than drawing everything flat and straight up and down. So what I'm going to do to facilitate that is get the angle of my eyes. And usually I like to go from tear duct to tear duct. A little bit of an issue with that is that I know that my eyes are not on the exact same level, because I've drawn myself a number of times, and I know that I'm not a model. So I believe that's one of the characteristics of supermodels, is that they have perfectly proportioned faces, especially their eyes. You know, their eyes are on the exact same axis. Most people's are not. And you get to know that the more people that you draw. So get myself in position. All right, now when we get the angle of my eyes, I'm also kind of looking at the angle of my brow, going down to the nose too, just to make sure that the angles of other parts of my head are lining up with that. So I'm not just basing this angle off of one thing, I'm basing it off of kind of a much greater overall movement. So you see I have my arm still outstretched. Now I have it here in front, and I see that I have an angle here. So I'm going to put my finger here to dot that, and this I'm going to mark about here, here. Now let's get a little bit of that angle. I actually have a straight edge right here. I have a ruler. And I have this thing, which is actually what I would typically use for measuring all these proportions and things, because I have, as you can see, I set this up like a ruler. So this is 1 inch, 2, 3, 4, and it's divided into quarters as well. So that when I'm, doing these very complex compositions on location, this is just a more accurate way of doing it. I also don't have to continuously go back to understanding the same measurement because I know where it lines up on a ruler, essentially. So, so that's a lot faster way of doing it. When I'm kind of showing you the more basic version, because I feel like that's really important to understand. So here is essentially the angle of my eyebrows, the angle of my eyes, and the rest of my head. So having that on here is really going to help me understand the movement, the kind of action of this whole pose. And that's also, a critical thing to understand at the very beginning. You don't want to have half the head drawn in there and then realize, oh, there should be an angle to everything, and then have to, basically redraw. So now that I have that in there, now I'm going to, let's see, what I'm going to do. I have the nose. This will get more fun soon, I promise. Though I always find that for me, the drawing stage is definitely one of the most nerve-wracking stages of making a picture. It's also, once again, I can't do two things at the same time. It is a difficult part of making a picture, partly because this is the foundation, so much is weighing on this being accurate and correct, but part of it is just that it starts out really boring. It starts out so boring, but this is, I guess I have just wasted enough time doing things that were, making bad drawings at the beginning and then having to change them halfway or 3/4 of the way through the painting, which obviously covers up so much more time. If I really take like 20 to 30 minutes to line the stuff up at the very beginning, it saves me so much time later on. So even though this is like, about as awesome as watching paint dry on your wall after you've just rolled it on, this is still just a crucially important part of the whole process. Alright, so I see, let me check that one more time. Alright, so I see that I'm getting lucky with my measurements here. The break in the mouth, because as you can see I'm posing with my mouth open, which looks kind of trashy, but there you have it. It's kind of, I think, to show a little bit of energy, a little bit of, I don't know, there's like a little excitement, a little bit of vulnerability to that. And we are in the middle of quarantine, so it just feels like it's appropriate. The closed mouth just doesn't feel right now, so I'm gonna let it hang open a little bit. So this is going to be the top part of my bottom lip, right there. So I know where that is. I think I should probably get that chin in there. Chin's pretty important, because right now I keep kind of seeing this as the bottom edge of my chin, which is not accurate. It's, I think, probably about right here, but we'll check that. So I'm actually going to go back to my original measurement just to see what it looks like in relation to a broad measurement. So I'm measuring from, once again, the top of my eyebrow to the bottom of my nose, that nostril down there, just under the nostril, and I'm moving down. And that looks to me like it's about a quarter of the way down. So a quarter of that whole measurement. And this is where, okay, right, so just making sure. So it looks like I estimated it probably a little bit too far. So if this is about half, then this is about a quarter. So it's probably about right here. And I have this tiny little mark that I just made that means nothing, so I'm going to get rid of it. So this I'm actually, so this is my base of the bottom of my chin mark. This one is a measurement that doesn't explain a whole lot to me. It's this initial measurement, move down one. It doesn't explain a whole lot, so I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm just going to kind of ghost it a little bit so that I'm not seeing it as kind of a measurement of a particular feature of my head. So now let's see. Where do we have it? So that's the edge of my eye. Let's see, the brow is about right here. So I think I'm feeling comfortable enough to actually start drawing some. And I'll still have to measure, but this is where, you know, since I've spent so much time on this guide, this is where things start to come together a little bit. I'm going to head back in position. Okay. The edge, the furthest point of the edge of my head, my cheek over here, comes out just a bit. Start moving a little bit here. You can, you know, measure the edge of my head. I don't typically do that because I don't find that getting angles, I don't find that getting angles like this translates particularly well to the canvas unless you're, you know, doing something more like sight size, or you're going for, you know, a bit more distortion and stuff like that. I did that for a while, and I just don't care for that element in my work anymore. So that's part of why I do more of this grid, is that